This is the nigga that died. Law, sin, and whoring. This is, I think, the sixth video of the series of videos. And before we jump into it, mind your language. You know the drill. We're gonna be speaking about fucking Zulu. So this is what's up. And I'm gonna jump straight into it, right? Just to share some of the outcomes, the critical outcomes of Life's Work test that was published in 2018. And this is the test result. So let's go to it. Screen view. What we have here. Alright, so we are doing this part, visible occurring events. This is what was evident in the test and what is being demonstrated in the test. So let me see here. That's what we got here. Let's start reading. The ambassador seen breaking the law. Law is defined as a set of principles that govern human activity to ensure that their desired impact on society and the environment is maintained. Law, however, is never really perfect, as there are often instances where exceptions need to be made. How does one know when it's the right time to enforce a law and when it's the right time to bend the law? This all depends on the intent behind the law. If the intent behind the law is not being achieved when the law is upheld, then this is when the law should be bent to ensure that the intent behind the law is achieved. Might illustrates that the law of Moses that was given to the Jews was given to them with the primary intentions of eliminating activities that would lead to the loss of human life. These laws cover two aspects: mankind's relations with God and mankind's relations with each other. Jesus of Nazareth, inspired by the Holy Spirit, is seen healing people on the Sabbath, and questions are asked by the Pharisees at the time was it lawful to perform such work of healing on the Sabbath? Jesus did this to simply show that the intent behind the law was to protect life, and healing is in line with that mandate. Therefore, despite the fact that he had to do some work, in inverted commas, on a forbidden day, because it was in line with the intent behind the law, Jesus is still regarded as being without sin, even though it is evident that he was a lawbreaker. In the same way, Might challenges the reader with the use of the commercial Zulu language to see that despite the fact that Might may have seemed to break the laws of conventional professional talk, would the reader perceive that life mandate? Would the reader fuss about the political incorrectness of some of the test content? Or would the reader perceive that this was all done to highlight the fact that mankind can finally successfully attempt to live forever? And this is so crazy, man. I think this is so dope. I'm reading this now. I haven't read this in so long. I think the last time I saw this was a couple of years back, but now this is too dope. I mean, this is, for me, the person writing this has a sound mind. It is crazy that I was written off as a mad person. I think the fundamental outcome of that statement there was, let's go to the first point, right? Jesus was a Sabbath lawbreaker, right? And however, he upheld the intent behind the law. So him being a Sabbath lawbreaker, so what the point I'm trying to drive home here is that the laws are put in place to make it specific. There's an intent behind every law. But sometimes you can break the law and still uphold the intent behind the law. So this is how Jesus can be said to be without sin, despite the fact that he broke the law. And the challenge that was made in the outcomes of the test is like, dude, right? I'm going to be out here saying, motherfucker this, motherfucker that, bitch hole, suck a dick, choking a dick, all of that stuff. But despite the fact that I speak and the audience in the professional context, despite the fact that I'm using unprofessional talk, or motherfucking Zulu, right? Despite that fact, I can still be seen as being without sin. And that was the challenge, and that was the challenge to the reader and the person taking Life's Work test. So, I hope that makes sense, because it must be quite clear and evident what the point that was being made. So, I'm going to jump straight back into it, right? Right? Sin to lawlessness. So in the context, and the reason why I titled Sin to Lawlessness is because there's breaking laws, but it's not necessarily lawlessness. True lawlessness is sin. So might clearly reveals that the true Bible definition of sin is not as unsuspecting Christians believe as breaking one of the 10 commandments given to Moses. Sin, might clearly and openly explains, is human activities that lead to the loss of human life. Might also boldly calls out the God Allah, which believes that God has no shared attributes with mankind and permits the compensation for the loss of life. This might boldly explains that no amount of money can measure up to the human potential. This might illustrates that by Jehovah creating man in his own image, he demonstrates that the Creator's intentions were in fact to prepare a place for himself, to dwell on earth with man in the form of a man. Might also illustrates that this is the primary reason behind the zero tolerance for activities resulting in the loss of human life. And I want to jump into this and make some more comments on this, because this is quite a lot of very loaded. It might be a short paragraph, but it's very loaded. The principle here is basically saying, guys, let me make the second point, right? Sin is activity that causes the loss of human life. So with Christianity and all the religions, we tend to get caught up in, if you break one of the laws, you have sinned. When the laws are actually put in place to prevent you from eventually sinning. So these are controls. So the laws are put in place to stop you from causing the loss of life. So where I want to make this substantiation is basically the first time sin is mentioned is not as unsuspecting readers would read the Bible and say Adam and Eve were the first ones to sin. No, they broke a law, but it did not necessarily sin. The first time sin occurred was when Cain killed his brother. So it was the act of causing the loss of life is sin. The act of causing the loss of life. So whatever activity it is, the act of doing that is sin. So this is why we have laws that are recommended to us by Moses, and then even later on by apostles like Paul, like recommendations. These are controls that are given to us, or potential controls that say, hey guys, live like this so that you can prevent the loss, prevent yourself from causing the loss of life. And if you were to be fundamental, only even before the laws of Moses, the rainbow covenant that was given to Noah, that basically the condition was, don't cause the loss of human life. You are going to be held accountable for the blood of your brother, your neighbor. Don't cause the loss of life. That was the principle behind the covenant of the rainbow covenant that was made with Noah and his descendants. So I believe we are one of those. We are, in principle, we are the descendants of Noah. So we should understand it in principle that we are bound by that principle. So yeah, I'm gonna go on and let's just tie this up. This way it gets more interesting. Let's go to the screen view again. Right, going after worthlessness. Right, the one principle that was highlighted is that the natural principle of man is that they are willing to kill for what they perceive as valuable. Might then illustrates that the Jews, because of their love for money, went after idols and money from their Amorite neighbors, thus leading them to doing whatever they could, even sacrificing their own children to leverage favor from these idols or financial success. Might also indicates that Jehovah regards such activities as sacrificing to idols as whoring, which in plain English means going after worthlessness. Whoring is also linked to prostitution, meaning performing activities for financial gain. In the modern context, the inability to recognize value or the inability to perceive value is problematic, as it leads to people killing each other over what is relatively worthless. Money. Might's fair claim is that no amount of money can measure up to the value of a human spirit or human potential. Thus, the problem with people who cannot recognize true value of life is that they are often prepared to kill or cause harm to their neighbors in order to gain financial benefit. If you have watched the Godfather trilogy, you would understand the gist of the story. So the message is that human beings must be able to perceive value in order that he may not mistakenly sell himself short. For example, a person that works in a firm and is not interested in a job and only does it for the purpose of earning a living can essentially be compared to a whore, because the person does not perceive any value in his job and thus is going after worthlessness. The same way a prostitute will consummate with a man she does not perceive as attractive or interesting, only for the financial gain. This implies that we live in a generation of spiritual whores. This is now the primary source of modern sin, which in essence is the cause of the loss of human life. Wow, that's crazy. That's so hectic. So that was such a loaded statement, and there's two things that came out here. Pointing out, number one, that money itself cannot compensate for the value of the human spirit. I want to point this out. I have a grandmother who was a traditional healer, and the ancestors made this comment very clearly that nothing was done, nothing was ever created upon the woman. Without the spirits of man, nothing was ever created. So the real value is in the human spirit. But now what we've been bewitched to kind of believe is that I can kill my brother, get rid of that guy, don't need that guy, I just need the money. But what does money buy me? Money buys me the value that my brother creates. And this is where we get it twisted. And this is why we have a bit of a problem in the game. And this is why I'm going to go in to make another example of spiritual prostitution. You know, why we live in a time where we can be called spiritual whores is the fact that I know this from my academic years. You go to university, you go cram all this information just for the point of getting marks. Then you earn the certificate. And at the end of the time, by the time you've earned the certificate or this degree or this, master's or whatever it is, you don't have the knowledge. You still don't have the skills. It's all that information you probably forgot already. And you just did it for the marks. It's the same as a woman on the side of the road going, yo, no, nigga, I'm gonna suck your dick. I'm gonna suck your dick for $100. I'm gonna suck your dick. $200, I'll throw you some ass. You don't do it for the value, like, hey nigga, I see what you're about. I wanna do something with you. I wanna build something with you. You just wanna be like, yo, I'm gonna give you some of my ass just so that I can get some money. And that's how academics. So that's why the corporate world right now is filled with these prostitutes. No different to the people on the side of the road. In fact, the women that are on the side of the road, the ladies of the night, probably have more value than these corporate prostitutes. I'm gonna be honest. And it might be a harsh commentary, but let's make my final point. I think the final points I'm making is human beings that perform tasks for the money, simply for the money, are the same as prostitutes. Humans should be able to recognize value and earn money from adding value. So the point I'm making here is that we live in a time where if you try to add value, you're going to lose money. The way to make money right now is you got to exploit people, which is not supposed to be the case. You shouldn't be earning money from exploiting people or taking away from life. You should earn money from making a contribution or making a value add. You shouldn't earn money from misleading people and giving them a false impression that there's value that you're giving them that is not real. You sell me, it's like advertising. You sell me this product and I have this expectation of what the capabilities of the product are. But when I get the product, I realize, there's nothing here. Oh well, moving along. Yeah. So the last point I want to make here is, let me just make my last point. Just give me a second. Alright. The last point I'm making here is in the context of Nazareta observing the laws regarding the Sabbath prayer. The custodian of Nazareta, should not be persecuted for not observing the Sabbath prayer according to the laws because he's the one that must respond to the prayer. And I think this is my final comment, because anybody that's watching this and that can do any math and that can connect the dots can probably perceive what's happening here, right? That the spirit behind the Nazareta movement is actually out here trying to finish off what he started, and this is the evidence of that. So what I'm saying is, in the same way, and that's why I brought up the issue of law and breaking the law, bending the law to uphold the intent behind the law. The intent behind the Sabbath prayer is to basically get the attention of the coming king, who's referred to as Inkosi Yasekuphakameni, that will respond to this prayer. And the response to the prayer is that, hey, we know that you are in principle the king of the Jews, right? Come and restore and re-establish what was the Zulu kingdom. That's what it's about, you know. So let's not get it twisted. That's what it's about. So the interventions that are going to be made in the near future should be taken with that in mind. They say that, yes, I'm a Nazareta, every Sabbath observe the Sabbath prayer. The prayer is a request for somebody, please, God damn it, show up and re-establish the Zulu kingdom. So if somebody in the context of the Sabbath tries to make an intervention to respond to that prayer, it should not be taken as lawlessness. Right, and this is what I'm trying to say. Ushembo Womoya, the custodian of the movement, set this up for that particular reason. To say, hey, look, let me set up a reminder for myself, so that when I get into the game, I know what the fuck I need to do. You know, what the fuck I need to do. So, I hope you guys enjoyed that. That's the end of this. We're going on to the next one.